welcome to the Common Law. My name is Attorney Ed Berkman. Here at the Common Law, we like to discuss common legal issues and sort of give you an everyday approach to the law. Before we get started, I just want to let everybody know, although I am an attorney, I'm not your attorney. If we talk about any items here on the show today, if it sounds like a similar issue you're dealing with or a similar legal question you may have, don't take this as legal advice. Please contact me. My email address is on the screen here below. Contact me. You can definitely ask me a question, and we can, give you a specific legal response. Everything we talk about here is just broad generalization. So again, even if it sounds really close to your issue, it's not specific to your issue. Trust me, it's not. And so just don't take anything we say here on legal advice. This is just our casual opinions. Today on the show, we have a realtor and law school student, Carrie. Carrie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Carrie Ann Cole.
Hi.
I'm an Ipswich resident, and I'm a Mass School of Law student, and your alma mater. Oh.
Yes, my alma mater. Carrie and I went to the same school. You're about to graduate, correct?
Yes. Yeah. One more semester, one more class. So.
Nice. And you are a realtor?
Yes, I've been a realtor for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yep,
That's
20
impressive.
years. I left corporate America and decided to get into real estate, construction, development.
What made you want to go in the direction of real estate?
Well, it was an opportunity to be self-employed, which was nice. After 9/11, it was a difficult time during corporate America with all kinds of changes in the industry that I was in. And I started to have a family, so that was nice too. Although, the flexibility with real estate is nice. It's still a juggling act, but it was an opportunity for us to come back to our hometown and open up a shop and not have to commute into Boston. And
That's
it was really
terrific.
great. Yeah, and be back with the folks that I grew up with and worked. Yeah.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And so you've been doing this, you said, for over 20 years?
Yeah, just about now.
So you've seen all the ups and downs.
Yes.
So, how is it today versus how was it 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, our first office actually was up in Portsmouth, and we did a lot of stuff here in Newburyport. I used to reside here in Newburyport. And that was during the, 2004-05, everything was pretty healthy. To the point where realtors were leaving business cards in front steps of homes around the North Shore, asking them if they were interested in selling because there was such a demand and the price was so great. And then we know what happened in 2008 when the bubble burst. So we went through that experience, which was great. Being an independent brokerage, we actually rode the wave pretty nicely, and really kind of stuck to more of the web-based marketing opposed to the brick and mortar, and that's what we see now today.
I mean, that makes sense. It's such a digital world right now. You can't, most stores don't even have real stores anymore.
I know.
So it makes sense. And in real estate, it's always your most or your biggest expense is always the rent or paying the mortgage. So
that's right. But it's funny you should say that, because I was just telling the story about, remember, I don't know, you might be too young, the Boston Globe used to have their Sunday edition for open houses. And for maybe 30 characters, it was about $300, and even back then. And so we steered away from that, knowing that the internet was the way to go. And here we are 20 years later, where there's the Redfins and the Zillows and all that of the world, which makes it accessible. So buyers are more informed now.
So do you feel like you have to work with Redfin, or do you try to establish your own brand against them? Yeah,
well, right now I currently work for a developer, so I'm actually representing just properties that we're building in the North Shore, but also in the Metro Boston area. So, I think the best realtors are the ones that kind of consider each other colleagues and play well with each other in the sandbox, is what I like to say. And healthy competition is always a good thing in any industry.
Yeah, and so just so we let everybody know, you're more of an independent contractor than you are like an employee. So even if a realtor is like a Redfin realtor, they're not really working for Redfin. They're more likely an independent contractor.
I think I don't know their business model, but I know that most realtors are independent or 1099, and I have my home office, and like again, you said, there's not so much the brick and mortar anymore. But it's interesting. There are different aspects of companies that are appealing to certain folks. Some people want to do just the inside sales support, and I would imagine maybe they're employees. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So when you were working, I mean, you're 20 years of experience in real estate. I'm a real estate attorney. So realtors and attorneys work hand in hand and throughout pretty much all the transactions. What are some of have you ever done a sale without an attorney in Massachusetts?
I have to tell you, even if I have, let's say, for example, an independent, like a first sale by owner, and I bring a buyer to them or I help to facilitate it, I will always recommend, and this was even before I was starting law school, even thought about becoming an attorney. It's just, it's really the best way, and I'm not saying this only to just plug you, but
No.
it really is the right way to go. There's so many intricate details to it. I had one couple that was adamant about not having representation, and both realtors were involved, and there was a potential Liz Pendants filing, and I couldn't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that they had the proper representation.
Yeah. Now, Liz Pendants, you want to explain for our guests what that is?
Well, it's basically the court's way of granting equity relief to, let's say, for example, I'm going to sell my house to you, and you have a really great deal, and then I refuse to sell it to you for a reason outside of the terms of the contract, because I want a better offer from buyer B who came in after the fact. Well, you obviously can file the Liz Pendants to ensure that I follow through with the contract.
Yeah.
Did I do good? Is that right?
Oh, that's as good as I would explain it.
All right, great.
Yeah, so those things come up usually when somebody, takes an offer and then they feel like through maybe not so legal means, like backdoor communications, that, oh, hey, there's a better offer out there. We kind of need to get around this. We need to pull out, but we just can't pull out for no reason.
Yeah.
So you got to
You sign that contract.
Yep, that purchase and sale agreement. So.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of people don't realize even the offer forms. We use a standard 2-page Massachusetts Association of Realtors form, but at the very bottom you'll see a number of dates that has with revisions that have been done by counsel that represents the Massachusetts Association of Realtors. So those are proper contractual forms, but they're in a template. But they should be considered as to the letter of every law.
I mean, I always consider them with the same pertinence as I would consider a purchase and sale agreement. It is essentially a contract.
Right.
There's an offer. I mean, like you're a law student, so let's boil down. So for our people at home, there's 3 major requirements for a contract. The first one is an offer. You can't have a contract without an offer. The second is an acceptance. Someone has to accept that offer. And the third is some sort of a consideration. For real estate deals, it's most likely money, like tangible dollars. Those offer sheets usually come in, I mean, I've only seen them come in usually like $1,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, $1,000 has probably been the standard for the 20 years that I've been working. And it's, again, just to bind the offer. And,
exactly.
People, well, can I get my money back and all that other stuff. Typically you don't see, if there's something unfortunate comes up within the 10 days before the home inspection, if there's a backup offer, especially in this market, usually no harm, no foul, and just give it back. But it's the situation where you have people locking up a house, and then they come back and renege, and then all of a sudden all the other buyers are gone. And that's what I try to protect my sellers on.
Do you usually use backup offers?
Yeah, well, today you can. I just sold a 2-family in Peabody. We put it on for $625. We thought it might be about $640-ish, and it sold for $690.
Oh, wow.
And we had 15 offers.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great for my clients because they're retiring. So that was a really nice thing for them to be able to, reap the rewards of their investment.
Yeah, I think backup offers are great. I don't I'm not a realtor, so I don't use them per se, but
Yeah.
I always offer, like, hey, if you got someone else looking to put an offer in,
Yeah.
get that backup offer, have them fill out all that paperwork, let them be an official backup
Oh,
offer.
yeah, I haven't done that, though,
Okay.
to be honest with you, because I felt that would, but I've always had given the courtesy of a realtor to say, look, hey, you came in second place. Do you want me to keep you on standby? So we kind of do it
Okay.
in that respect. And, and they're like, yeah, please let me know if anything happens. But I'm not sure. I've never gone so far as to actually draft up or sign a second.
I will always say prepare the document
Yeah.
and just don't have them sign it.
Okay. All right.
So it's there.
Yeah. Okay. That's how
So
you do
we
it.
just don't sign the acceptance until we
Perfect.
are accepting it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we don't, obviously you wouldn't, I wouldn't advise clients to take money in that situation.
That's right. Right.
So, because that would,
Yeah.
like, an offer sheet's just an offer sheet, but you
Yeah.
have it and you just have
Yeah.
it ready to have them sign it. I mean, usually that comes in anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have an opportunity. When I've only done it a couple times. I'm
Yeah.
not a realtor, but I've just sort of looked at them before. I'll write back up in handwriting on
Gotcha. Oh.
it. And so, again,
that's
we're not
instructive.
accepting any money. We're not signing it, but like the understanding.
Yeah, as long as the
is-
terms are clear, then
Yeah.
you're covered. Yeah, and I don't like to, usually just say have everybody come with their best foot forward. When you get into escalation clauses or, kind of pit people against each other, it never seems to work out for the sellers. I try to explain that to them ahead of time because, when people get into a bidding war, they get frustrated, emotional, and, sometimes you end up with nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even. So, bidding war, everyone's heard the horror stories
Right.
recently. Today's market being so hot
Yeah.
and inventory being so low.
Yeah, it's tough for
So,
buyers.
Yeah. Is it now? Bidding wars are great for sellers? Are there any downsides?
Oh,
for
sure.
sellers?
Yeah. I think if you navigate it properly and don't get greedy, I think that's the key because if you start, my clients, for example, in Peabody, we had a game plan. I told them they'd probably end up around 670. And, based on the activity of the two open houses, it was just packed.
Okay.
So those folks that submitted the offers out of the gate at those numbers pretty much knew the competition was pretty stiff.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned in your early days the real estate market was
Yeah.
really booming.
Yeah.
And now we see it today. I wasn't doing this 20 years ago, so I can't say for what it was. But it seems like today it's, even with the interest rates going up, it's
Yeah.
still super competitive market. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it depends. I have a 55 plus development, so that's a different demographic. You have a lot of people that are empty nesters and they want to sell their, 3,000, 4,000 square foot house and start thinking about retirement because I think this window of opportunity to, capture the highest return on your home, which is typically everyone's largest
Yeah.
investment, it could be shrinking a tad. I don't want to speculate. I'm not a finance, expert.
yeah.
But, everything ebbs and flows, and cyclical patterns tend to do exactly that, come right back around.
What goes up must come down.
Exactly.
They've said that forever.
Yeah.
So.
So, I mean, with the rates being, going from 2.75, a couple years ago to 6 now, 6 still really isn't bad, but it's hard for people to put it in perspective. I think my parents used to complain about 13% in the 80s. So I remember, not that I was, of age to understand the difference,
Yeah.
but, you hear people cry about the 13%. So, yeah, the market is slowing down a little bit in the city. So it depends on where you are in the demographic. But I think it's just slowing down and I think it's a good thing, even though I'm representing the developer and the seller, I think it's a good thing because they don't feel as though they have, pardon the expression, a gun to their head where they feel like they have to do something and maybe was rushing into a decision that they should probably try to take some time with.
Yeah.
It's,
It's a big decision.
it's a huge decision.
You really got to sleep on it.
Yeah.
So, given the state of the interest rates, what do you think? What are they hovering at right now?
Yeah, they're very, very, I think a couple were hovering around the high 5s, but mostly 6.2.
Yeah.
And another thing people don't realize, but it's hard for young people to wrap their heads around, is like a 5-year arm or a 7-year arm with a local lender is not a bad thing. And you
No.
can pay a point down, which gives you a little bit more buying power. and you can always refinance when, but it kind of scares people a little bit with a 5-year adjustable.
I mean, adjustables are really scary, but I always tell people right now, it's like, don't be afraid of the interest rate.
Right.
When I was doing conveyancing work, I was during the real estate boom, like I was doing refinances from like 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, and I was just helping people refi, just closing out loans all day long. And people were saving. I mean, they were buying houses in the 5s and the 6s and the 7s, and they're refining in the the 2s or the 3s or the 4s.
Yeah.
And they were. I mean, I was helping people save $400 to $700 off their monthly bill,
Right.
which is why I say, like, buy a house now.
Yeah.
The rates are always they're up and they're down.
Yeah.
Like you can't live your life like that.
A 30-year fix is you can't go wrong with it at 6.
And if you can get a better rate with a 5-year ARM, which is an adjustable rate mortgage,
Well,
all the better luck to you, because then you're just giving yourself a 5-year window where you're like, I can try to refinance this, within 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. And another tip also for folks that are considering buying is that you can also ask more of the developers, less maybe independent, just homeowners. You can ask developers to buy a point down. So that instead of a price reduction, you can request a point, which actually might be more advantageous. So they can go from a 6 to a 5% rate, and all local lenders know how to calculate that, and it's beyond my pay grade, but it is a really great tool.
Yeah.
If it pushes somebody out of the price point.
How would you define a point, just so our viewers here know?
So if your interest rates are at 6%, essentially over the cycle of the 30-year, the lender will give you, being the developer, a figure, and usually, depending on the price point, could be anywhere from $15,000 to $35,000. Again, depends on the price point. And we're essentially buying down a point. So instead of 6%, the buyer would be paying 5% on the life of their 30-year fix.
And they're paying that up front.
Correct.
And so that'd be part of their, closing.
Closing. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Now, do you recommend buying the point? Do you feel like it's advantageous? Do you feel like it is?
I think it depends on the situation. The bottom line is it depends on what the developer wants the place to close at. For comparables, there's all kinds of other factors involved. So that's a motivating factor.
One of the biggest complaints I heard when I was doing that conveyancing work was always people complain about the cost of the loan. So some people didn't realize that they were getting. I had a guy who had a 1.99 interest rate. He was floored with the closing cost price. It was closing cost was like $15,000. He was like, "How does it cost this much to close out a loan?" And I go, "Well, I'm not cheap for me to be here."
Yeah.
And also, it's like you bought 2 points.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
That's how you have to do it. But you got to think of it. Look at all the money you're saving from that interest rate.
Right.
Like
over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's almost like putting more money down. But it gets you the longer value.
Yeah, especially, I always say when buying points makes a lot of sense when the rates are really low.
Yeah.
Because then you're probably going to keep that rate, and you're probably never going to refinance that again.
That's right.
But again, don't be afraid to buy a house right now. You can refi later, save your money. It'll be like giving yourself a raise in the future. Don't be afraid of it.
And the rental rates are just so high. It's so discouraging to see people that are just starting out that they don't have the money to put down, where it'd be cheaper probably to buy a condo than to rent one. But again, credit scores, all that type of thing comes into play.
I mean, ideally, I would say everybody should be buying as opposed to renting, just because you take your money and you're investing in something that you own, and it's just going to go up in value. I mean, most likely. There are some instances where I guess property values would go down, but it's so rare these days. It's something I don't think anybody should really be worrying about.
I love when I work with first-time home buyers to find like a really nice, and I don't think this is derogatory, I call it a Nana house. Some house that's been so well cared for over the years, just beautifully maintained, but might just need a lot of like paint or
some wallpaper.
Right? And that's great sweat equity, and it's just you're reaping the benefits of somebody that's taken really good care of like a nice, cute little 1950s 50s Cape. I've sold a couple of these down over.
Oh,
but
fantastic.
not right now where you live.
Oh, great.
But so I like finding those type of gems, opposed to finding something that is going to be a money pit, even though they fall in love with it. And I talk somebody out of a house before I talk them into it, and you can see the problems that might arise due to the poor construction or just the lack of care.
Yeah, when we were looking for a house, when my wife and I were looking to buy our first house, we found this beautiful house in Haverhill. It was the biggest house in our price range. It sat on the top of a hill, but it was sort of like they had carved out like a little spot in the hill. So like it was.
So it kind of married into the 45-degree angle.
Exactly,
of the,
a little bit. And so we had come there right after a rainstorm.
Oh.
And the backyard, they had like this deck, and it covered most of the yard. But then like once you stepped onto the grass, it was like my foot went completely into like the grass.
Because that was probably probably capturing all the rain behind the hill,
yeah, exactly.
too, right? Yeah.
And so like there was like a lot of like retaining walls, and some of them were kind of like leaning over, and we're just like, this could be a problem. I feel like in the next 5 to 10 years, I feel like we might be having a structural problem.
And that's a good point, because home inspectors, some people think a lot of people are waiving the home inspection, which is fine, but I would strongly recommend if it's a house, you bring maybe a contractor through, a friend of the family to kind of give a cursory glance, but if you really think it's going to be a real problem, termites or anything of that nature, it's worth the home inspection, even if you have to back out after that time.
And a lot of people will say, they're like, oh, well, if something goes wrong, I can just sue my home inspector. Chances are you're signing an agreement with that home inspector that's going to alleviate them of all liability.
Yeah,
so,
and they're pretty cautious. I think it was back, it was in the 90s. That I think regulations were changed, and there was a gentleman, he was a friend of mine that worked for AIG, and he was lobbying as an independent person because he was really badly burnt, if you will, from a home inspector, but there was no real regulatory enforcement there. And I think, word of mouth, I think a good home inspector will say, I would recommend calling a plumber to take a closer look at this. This looks a little suspect to me,
So it's still use a home inspector, but it's not going to be the be-all, end-all. It's not going to give you everything you need, but you got to protect your investment.
You got to know what you're buying.
Yeah, exactly. So how closely do you work with lawyers now, currently in this 55-plus development?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of the prep work, if you will, for condo docs and budgets and things of that nature that need to be submitted and filed in order for the closing to take place. So, the 55 plus, for example, certain language needs to be in there so that the bylaws are properly representing the rules of the development. So I like to put my hand in it. I didn't necessarily think I ever wanted to be an attorney, but I kind of fell into it because of the 55 plus focus. So I'm not going to be taking anything away from you with
please.
Real estate.
There's room for everybody.
Yeah, no, but I really want to focus on elder law. And,
fantastic.
Yeah, just.
So dealing with 50. So you were dealing with older clientele.
Well, 55 is not elder. Let me just preface that.
I'm almost 40, so I probably got to be careful with that.
I'm only a few years away from.
All right, so you start working with elderly, or not elderly, 55 plus.
Yeah, that demographic.
Yeah.
That will become.
Oh, and so you weren't just like fed up with working with real estate attorneys and like, I could do it better than them?
No, I kind of had an epiphany, actually. I used to do a lot with, I hope I meant Brooksby Village, Erickson Communities, and I really just liked helping people transition from their home into, continued care facilities like that, which offer like tremendous, whether it be, to me, it just seems like a cruise ship on foundation. It just has so many things to offer people, not only from a healthcare standpoint, but from a social perspective. And that's all. I'm not plugging them. I have no affiliation to them. But that's when I started realizing how much I enjoyed that transition. And, our demographic is going to, I think by the year 2030, 1 out of 5 people are going to be over the age of 60, so it's something that's going to be a demand, I hope. I hope we're all around for a long time. And I mean, people are getting older, they're living longer. And you want to be prepared, and that's
Yeah.
what you do as well,
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly. And healthcare is just getting better and better. So yeah, it's everybody. And the thing is, like, there's a ton of abuse in those communities,
Yeah.
and there's not a ton of representation for them.
Yeah.
A lot of families don't know where to turn to.
Yeah.
So it's
And-
really
and
good.
families can be destroyed very quickly from a lack of preparation.
Yeah, lack of preparation, lack of just knowing. A lot of people just don't even know. They don't even know what
Nobody
to do.
wants to think about the inevitable,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you
Like
have to kind of.
Like, I will tell some older folks, if you're worried about, planning for your, like, potential nursing home stay in the future, that's all a worry. Take your house, put it into a revocable trust. Get your hands off of it. At least protect that.
Right.
Like, you might not be able to protect all your assets from a
Right.
mass health claim. And so when we say mass health claim, basically, the state of Massachusetts pays for part of your nursing home care. And after you die, once a probate is opened up, whoever your probate attorney is notifies the Division of Medical Assistance. And they can then put a claim against your estate to recover the money that they paid. So when we talk about that, it's, there's certain planning pieces that you can do to better protect, your assets at that time, so you don't leave your family with nothing. So that's why, it's good to get an attorney like Carrie in a year or so when she passes the bar.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of leaning more towards trying to stay at home, bringing the
Yeah.
health aid into the home, and that's why I really feel strongly about single level living options. Like if you can't do the stairs, that's okay. But if everything else is for you on that single level, it allows you a longer period of time for independent living, and that's all. Everyone wants to
Yeah.
be in a dignified situation, and if you can bring the home health aid into the home opposed to having to leave your home, it just keeps family around, and I think it's just good overall.
Yeah, so, and you probably do something similar that I like to do, which is you help some clients with, the purchase of their house, or the selling of their house. And then if you also do that elder law estate planning section, you can it's a very easy transition, because the clients already know you, you've already done a great job for them. And then you can help them with, their estate planning, or if they're dealing with an elder law issue.
Yeah.
It's a great sort of transition.
Yeah.
People don't like my experience has been, people don't like talking to lawyers. We tend, as attorneys, to maybe even inadvertently talk above someone's head. And like, I catch myself doing it. I don't mean to be doing it. Sometimes I just kind of forget.
Right.
So it's always good to just make, like,
Educate.
But
Yeah.
also make people comfortable. Like, it's tough out there.
Well, I recommend, I won't do both. I think I'll be able to, with my real estate experience, help families find the right realtor for them, because I don't want to cross over too many lines.
Okay.
But my point will be that I can vet that out. Like, for example, I have a friend that I went to elementary school with, and her dad is 90, mom has passed, and she lives in Florida, and he lives up on the North Shore. And she was kind of concerned, as he was transitioning into assisted living, that he was getting taken advantage of, and she, felt she could comfortably call me, and relied on my relationship, and it just kind of made everybody feel better knowing that I had that experience, even though I wasn't getting involved with the real estate. And so that's kind of how I see my role in the future.
Oh, perfect.
Kind of want to carve out, maybe this position already exists, but I think there'll be more of a need for that type
Absolutely,
of bridge.
there definitely will be. So when are you finished with law school?
And I will be graduating December.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm gonna take a breather this summer, starting my bar prep. I'll take my comp classes that you are so familiar with, and I stretched out my last semester because of real estate, knowing that this was going to be a big push. And I think things will get quiet in the real estate development world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
in the next
definitely.
12 months.
Absolutely. When you started law school,
Yeah.
how was that transition? Because you still worked full time.
Yeah.
How as a person who did work full time and went to law school at the same time, that transition was like running to a wall at some points.
Yeah,
for
but
me,
I
at
love
least.
it.
You love it?
I love
Okay.
it. I have kids; they're 21 and 20 now. But at the time when I started, because there was a big pause in there with COVID, I was pre-law when I graduated my undergrad. I never thought I was focusing on law enforcement and public safety, but I just enjoy it. So it is hard, no question.
It's definitely hard.
If I didn't enjoy the material, I'm sure it would be much more difficult.
I can't imagine doing it with children. I just worked and I went to school. I didn't have to take care of any kids at that time. Like being a new father.
Yeah.
So I've just had a baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So being a new father, I don't know how anybody has time to do anything for themselves.
Yeah. Well, it takes a good partner. You have a good partner, cooperation, and and I want to be a good role model for my kids. But I'm doing the longer term plan than your because you can do it part time versus.
I did it part time as well.
Yeah.
So I stretched it out.
Yeah.
My rule was I'm not taking any summer classes.
Yeah.
I just took the summers off.
Me too.
Just to give myself that little bit of a breather. I would still work like summer hours at work.
Yeah.
So you just kind of try to enjoy life a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, come the fall, we're hitting the books.
Yeah.
Like everything else is put on hold personally, and then you get through it, and then again you take Christmas off, so you have like the whole Thanksgiving to New Year's off.
Yeah, and my schedule was like my kids' schedule when they were in elementary and middle and high school. So, but yeah, I think when having a law degree, you can do so much with it, and my goal being almost 55, is to kind of work with my peers. Having the ability. Real estate is pretty grueling. Working the weekends and the hours. People think it's easy, but I'm sure anybody listening that's a realtor can relate that it's if you're doing it and you're doing it full time, you
not
do
a
it
9
right.
to 5.
No,
your phone could ring at any moment,
that's
and you
right.
have to.
So,
that's a client. That's a customer. You have to put them first.
Yeah, but you're also kind of you become their part of their family. You just kind of get engrossed in the whole thing, and you can't just be like, sorry, I have the day off.
Yeah.
But so I hope to kind of incorporate myself into my peers and be able to work, for as long as I'm able. But I think it's a better transition into retirement than for real estate, and that's just my opinion.
Yeah. How was going to law school during the pandemic?
It was tricky, but ExamSoft is a product I think most schools are using, or law schools are using. So the technology was afforded everyone to be able to take exams in front of their monitor and be monitored, and so it was tough because I think the interaction, even though you had a Zoom call with 20, 50 kids, whatever, students, you still lose that interaction. As Mass School of Law is really kind of more of a practicum. It gives you, all the professors are working full time, so you get that interaction of like, oh, I had a case last week. It's not just lecture style.
Yeah, so for most people don't understand, there's many different kinds of law schools. Sometimes you go to law school and it's just lectures. This is what you need to know. This is the law. Law schools tend to teach more of the common law, which is basically just like old time. I would call it like old timey law.
English law.
Old English law, yeah. And then so that's what you learn. But then when you have to take the bar exam, you have to know state-specific law that you might not have learned in law school. So you have to learn that before you take the bar exam, obviously, so you can pass it.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Like, they don't necessarily teach you what's on the bar at law school.
Yeah.
Which is like a common. I think people get that confused.
Well, I liked my wills and trusts because the professor is an attorney, and he will talk about real life cases. No names, obviously. As the laws change, tax laws change. So you're really getting a feel for what you need to do to kind of get a jump.
Yeah.
Maybe have your own shingle someday after getting some experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's when I was in law school, they went from just the standard Massachusetts wills and trusts law to the uniform probate code. So like
it's all
now
changing.
Yeah, so you gotta look now. I gotta look up just look up the code, which the code is just a bunch of different statutes. We just gotta look it up.
Yeah.
Just to see
So
how it's different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because what I was taught was something just not used anymore.
That's right. But we have the foundation.
Yeah, again, and that's really what I think, for me at least, that law school was the good thing about, was it just sort of gave you, and Mass School of Law is more of that hands-on approach to things as opposed to just lecture and learn it and go on from there. Like, they kind of made you come to those conclusions on your own as opposed to just lecturing them and telling them to you.
Yeah.
Like you had to read the cases, come up with what the rule of law was, and if you didn't, when you briefed your case, so when you summarized your case, you might not have been right.
Yeah.
You could have picked out a different rule of law, or you could have been a little off base, and knowing that you could do that wrong, and seeing that when you attended the class, for me, was a huge benefit.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I was concentrating on these facts, should have been more concentrated on these other set of facts. I see what I did wrong, and so now I hopefully can apply what I've learned going into the next case or the next class.
Right, and having a smaller school helps with that because it's a little bit more personal in that you're not just getting a grade and wondering where you went wrong, because there's so many variations of perspectives. Exactly. Sometimes there's not a wrong answer, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a different way of getting to the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's hard. It must be super hard to do that if you're sitting on a Zoom call, as opposed to being in a class with me, and it's a small school, so you could be in a class with maybe 20 people.
That's right.
And just sort of the 20 of you just sort of hashing it out.
Yeah.
And you do something that I think is super important for all lawyers, and I think a lot of lawyers struggle with this, and that is explaining the law to somebody who isn't a lawyer.
Right.
And like I said before, that's why some people don't like lawyers. They feel like we talk over them and it's true. We do tend to do that.
Well, not everything's law and order either, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, somebody says, well, I have a malpractice case. Well, what was your damages? What was your harm? Well, you really have to bring people to the point where, because it is such a litigious society that we live in, and it's a shame that it's there to protect people. The law is protecting people, not trying to go after people, but as you know, that there's different variations of practice.
I think you just have to keep your sympathy for, and just treat people like people.
Just explain it, and relate to them.
Yeah, we're all going through it.
Yeah.
We're all everyone's going to go through the same stuff.
That's right.
Eventually. We're all going to get older. We're all going to
and that's kind of why I wanted to do this, because, things in my family that weren't planned out properly, can have a negative impact on relationships, which, you try to do your best you can.
Yeah, and family dynamics are tough by themselves.
Thanksgiving.
Let's throw in, money or a
not
death
even money.
Or something like.
I don't know about you, Ed, but I feel that, and that's kind of where I had the epiphany to go to law school, when I had a situation where a client passed away and 3 siblings, they were fighting over a Hummel, which I get that, because I'm very sentimental, and it's not necessarily about the dollar signs. It's about the silliest things that maybe a sibling didn't realize meant a lot to you and that your mom wanted you to have, and somebody went in and cleared it out and brought it over to a flea market. Those are the things that I think that that become really splinters some relationships within families, and sometimes not the money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Hummels sometimes are worth a lot of money.
Well, that's
too.
true.
So I wonder if sometimes he's like,
I use that example.
I looked up the Hummel. Mom's Hummel's worth like $15,000. I know how much that's worth.
All right, how about the Raggedy Ann doll?
Yeah, exactly.
Or something like that. Yeah.
I always find it funny when people start divvying up like a relative's possessions.
Yeah,
and
it's sad.
It's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, I believe it. My mom just happened to bring over some things that my grandmother had given her, and my mom's downsizing, and they were just they were salt and pepper shakers. They were silver salt and pepper shakers. But I remember them being on my grandmother's dining room table, and she knew they meant a lot. So it's kind of nice that she gave them to me while she's still here. Yeah. Because she doesn't have any use for them.
And she could see you enjoy them.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
See, oh my God, I love these.
It doesn't mean you have to go give away everything.
Yeah.
But
that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Carrie, thank you for coming on to the Common Law.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
Before we go, a couple questions.
Yeah.
So first, what would you recommend somebody who's trying to become a realtor? What are the best steps for them to go about that?
Yeah, definitely sit down and have lunch with somebody that's seasoned, that's been doing it for 10 plus years, that have seen the ebbs and flows, and know that it's great to get in when the getting's good, but if you can't survive it when the wave kind of crashes, you have to have a plan B. And so it's not a part-time job. I think it's got the 80-20 rule to it, that 80% of the people that come in think it's going to be easy, but 20% are the ones that really, try to kind of push through and treat it like a 50-hour-a-week job, which it can be.
Yeah.
And then a good education. There's some great schools around here that you can either do online or in person now. And, I think it's great. I have an intern from Northeastern, actually, and they have a little real estate club.
Oh, wow.
And, one person's in engineering and wants to get into development. The other one is in business. But it's interesting to see, and Northeastern's great. These kids are like, they're 21 and they act like they're 30. They're like ready to get going in the real world. So, just try to network.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And second question, what would you tell somebody looking to start going to law school? What would you recommend? What were the first steps?
Yeah, do it for the right reasons. If you have a passion for something, like, again, law touches all kinds of different areas of professions. So you could be, in a business position or even a marketing position, and you feel like you want to do something different, but maybe you don't want to go and get your MBA. Look into what types of jobs require a law degree in that area that is of interest to you, whether it be healthcare or computer science, anything of that nature. Obviously, there needs to be in-house counsel or, attorneys that are available to speak to all those types of issues.
But ultimately a worthwhile endeavor?
Yeah, no, I have no regrets.
Okay,
no,
great.
I have no regrets, no. And, no, not at all. Not at all.
Well.
Yeah, I just got to get over the finish line.
Yeah, you're almost there. This is the worst part. It gets so much better.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited,
Well,
and I appreciate all your support.
Well, congratulations on almost graduating.
Yes, thanks.
Good luck with the bar exam. I think you're going to do great.
Thank you.
I tell people this before. I think I've told you this already. Take your time. Mm-hmm. Know how much time you have for each question. Just take your time with it. Mm-hmm. Like, stress is your enemy at the bar exam.
I know.
It's really just I felt it's more of a test of time management than it ever was really your knowledge of the law. Like, you have to know the law.
Yeah.
And you have to know it quickly. But, like, don't allow yourself to get stuck on one thing. Because if you don't know something, you could be taking away time from something that you know really well.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you
and I think
have more time to answer the questions that you know, as opposed to like pondering questions that you don't.
My grandfather had this really corny joke, which was, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And it's like practice.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's going to be the tool in my toolbox to just keep practicing. So.
Yep. Well, great. Well, again, Carrie, thank you for joining us
for
today.
having me. Congratulations on your new guy.
Thank you. Yeah, he's a sweetheart. Yeah, fatherhood's completely different.
Yeah.
It's changed my life overnight.
Yep.
I didn't think it would.
It will.
Yeah.
It did.
Well, all right. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for joining us as well. I hope you found our conversation this evening educational and hopefully a little entertaining. Next week or next month on the Common Law, we'll be discussing another common legal issue. Catch you next time. Good night. This podcast has been written, produced, and edited by myself, attorney Edward Berkman. The production coordinator of this podcast is Sarah Blackstone. The Common Law has been produced with the training and resources provided by WJOP 96.3 FM Joppa Radio. Thank you.